I don't remember my knees giving out. Only the cold tile kissing them. Maybe it was the sentence, those 12 words carved like a blade, that made my body forget how to hold itself up. But there it was, the line that shattered the last warm corner of my world. If you're done being useful, then stay out of our children's lives, permanently. The paper trembled between my fingers, soft as dried leaves, whispering each tremor of my hands. The hallway lights above me flickered, one of those long white bulbs that hummed like an irritated wasp, making the whole moment feel like it was happening under interrogation lamps. My breath scraped the inside of my throat. My voice barely existed when I whispered. My own grandchildren, banned from seeing me. The words didn't feel like mine. They sounded like a stranger's grief echoing down some long tunnel. I could smell Seren's perfume still lingering in the air, sharp, metallic, something with cold vanilla in it, like a sweetness that had turned mean. I held the letter closer to my face. The ink smudged where a tear had fallen. I hadn't even noticed I'd cried. Even the walls seemed to recoil from me. The silence in the house was heavy, deliberate, like it was choosing sides. Somewhere upstairs, I could hear floorboards creaking. Not the soft, playful creaks of children running, no. These were the stiff, irritated footsteps of adults who believed they owned every inch of oxygen around them. My son's voice murmured behind a closed door. My heart tightened without permission. I tried to swallow, but my throat felt full, full of memories, full of things I never said, full of all the warnings I ignored. For a moment, a memory pushed through without knocking. Jade's small fingers in my hair. Milo's sleepy forehead pressed to my shoulder. Pancakes at dawn, laughter that warmed the entire kitchen. The kitchen where I was no longer welcome after 8 p.m. The kitchen where Seren once told me, with a smile painted too tightly on her face. You don't need to mother anyone anymore, Harleen. That phase of your life is over. I should have paid attention. There was a glassiness in her eyes, too smooth, too practiced. Now that same glassiness bled through every word in this letter. Cold. Controlled. Final. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I pressed my palm to the floor to steady myself. It was cold, even though the heating vents hummed in the background. I could feel something else in the house, too, an air of displacement. The way people act when they're preparing a space for someone else. Or removing someone permanently. Boxes. Empty shelves. Labels. Doors closing faster. Whispers stopping when I entered a room. It all came back in a sickening rush. Maybe this letter wasn't the beginning. Maybe it was the final nail in a coffin they'd been building around me inch by inch. I read the letter again. The handwriting was neat. Too neat. Seren always wrote like she was afraid of looking imperfect. Each letter looked ironed, straightened, rehearsed. The message burned. Your presence disrupts the children's emotional development. You've had your time. Please respect our boundaries. Boundaries. They weaponized that word often. But the last line was the one that took something from me I didn't know could still be taken. Stay away if you want peace. My lips parted. A small sound escaped me, like a whimper someone had strangled halfway out. Something shifted inside me. I felt it, a small, unfamiliar crack of something sharp beneath the grief. Was it anger? No. Not anger. Anger is hot. This was cold, precise, and awakening. Like the first moment a drowning person's fingers find the edge of a lifeboat. For months I had been shrinking, adjusting, apologizing for taking up space in the house I helped pay. For the meals I cooked. For the care I offered. For existing too loudly. for breathing in a way that bothered Seren. But right there on the hallway floor, with that hateful letter crumpling softly in my palm, I felt something unshrink. Something straighten. Something remember. The hallway darkened slightly, someone blocking the ceiling light. A familiar silhouette appeared just at the edge of my vision. Brent. My son. He didn't rush to help me up. He didn't kneel. He didn't say, "Mom, what happened?" He just stood there. Hands in his pockets. Jaw working back and forth. Eyes avoiding mine. Guilt? I couldn't tell. His voice finally broke the silence, low and uncomfortable. You found it." My heart stopped for a beat. Found it? He knew. He knew the letter was there. He knew what it said. He allowed it. My breath hitched as I looked up at him, searching his face for the boy I raised, the boy who once cried because he broke a plastic dinosaur and begged me to fix it, Mama. But I didn't see that boy. Not even a shadow of him. I saw a man standing on a cliff he willingly walked toward. And standing there, I understood something awful. He had chosen her. Not me. Not the mother who worked 2 jobs through Wisconsin winters. Not the woman who pawned her own wedding necklace to pay his tuition deposit. Not the hands that held him through fevers and nightmares. He chose her. And this letter, this cruel, calculated letter, was their joint message. I tightened my grip on the paper, and it hit me. This wasn't just a letter. It was a warning. A countdown. A door slowly closing. Before I could speak, before I could even breathe deeply enough to gather my thoughts, there was a sudden knock at the front door. Sharp. Urgent. Unexpected. Brent flinched. Seren's hurried steps echoed from the kitchen. And I felt it. A ripple of something electric in the air. Something was about to change. Something big. Something terrifying. Something that would make this letter feel like only the beginning. I turned toward the front door. And everything inside me went still. The knock at the door echoed through the house like a warning bell, but Brent didn't move toward it. Neither did I. Maybe we were both afraid of what might wait on the other side. But before that moment could unravel, let me tell you how we got here. Because betrayal never begins loudly. It starts quietly, soft as dust settling, until one day you look around and realize you're buried beneath it. I was never supposed to stay here forever. After Farland died, the house felt too big for one grieving woman. Every corner carried his scent, cedar and machine oil, and the faint sweetness of the hard candies he kept in every coat pocket. So when Brent said, "Mom, just come stay with us for a while. We'll take care of you," I believed him. I always believed him. I moved into the small guest room at the end of the hall. A room that once held exercise equipment and forgotten boxes. A room with one narrow window facing the neighbor's fence. A room where sunlight visited only briefly before stepping away. I told myself it was just temporary. Just until I can breathe again, I whispered to myself on the first night. But grief has its own timeline, and loneliness is a long winter. At 72, I tried not to be a burden. I'm soft-spoken. Always have been. 40 years as an elementary school librarian will do that to you. You learn to speak gently, to soothe, to guide, to make quiet spaces feel safe. But this house swallowed my softness. Every sound felt too loud, the kettle, my drawers opening, even the soft click of my reading lamp. Seren would appear in the hallway with her arms folded, as if measuring how much oxygen I was consuming. She had a way of looking at me as though I were an outdated appliance someone forgot to throw away. Cold eyes. Tight jaw. Smile that never reached her cheeks. I pretended not to notice at first. I pretended a lot of things. Hallway tension became its own weather. The hall light was always too bright, bleaching the walls, revealing every speck of dust. I often felt like one of those specks, small, intrusive, out of place. Whenever I opened my door, I could hear whispers. Hushed. Urgent. Cutting off the moment my foot touched the hallway carpet. One afternoon, as I passed the kitchen, I heard Seren hiss. She's everywhere. Always listening. It's suffocating. Brent said nothing. Just sighed in that defeated way, the way someone does when they've stopped fighting for anything. I pressed my hand to my chest and kept walking. My son began to shrink away from me. Brent used to hug me without thinking. Quick squeezes on his way out the door. Little affectionate taps on my shoulder when he passed behind me. I raised that boy with warmth. I poured warmth into him like water into dry soil. But lately, whenever I walked into a room, Brent would straighten his posture, pull his expression back into something unreadable. Controlled. Distant. Dismissive. He began answering me with single-syllable words. Fine. Later. Sure. Don't worry about it. His eyes drifted past me instead of landing on me. He never touched my shoulder anymore. I felt that absence more than I felt the cold. But the worst part was the silence of little feet. Jade and Milo used to burst into my room like tiny whirlwinds, jumping onto my bed, rummaging through my old storybooks, begging for grandma time before their parents noticed. I lived for those small sticky hands grabbing mine. For the chorus of "Grandma, watch this." For the scent of crayons and bubblegum shampoo. But then, the visits stopped. First gradually. Then completely. One afternoon, when I opened my door, I saw them in the hallway, standing very still, Jade holding Milo's hand, both of them staring at me like staring wasn't allowed. "Hi, sweetheart," I whispered. Jade bit her lip, looked toward the stairs, stepped back. Milo whispered, almost inaudible, "We're not supposed to." The door to the den creaked open. Seren stood there, half-shadowed, arms folded. Her voice was sugar-coated poison. "Kids, what did I say about disturbing Grandma?" Disturbing. As if I were a ticking time bomb in the guest room. She guided them away with a hand on each small shoulder, her nails perfectly manicured, her smile tight as a thread about to snap. I stood there in the doorway, my heartbeat lodged in my throat, the faint smell of fabric softener drifting from their clothes. That's when I realized something quietly devastating. They weren't avoiding me. They were being directed away from me. And Brent. He let it happen. The house became a museum of what I used to have. My guest room became my world. A narrow bed. One small dresser. A lamp whose bulb flickered more than it shined. A single photograph of Farlin on the nightstand. I'd sit on the edge of the bed sometimes and listen to the muffled living room laughter, the children's giggles, the clink of glasses, and feel like a ghost wandering through my own life. Unseen. Unwelcome. Unremembered. But betrayal doesn't always announce itself. It creeps. In the way conversations stopped when I walked into the room. In the way Seren added new house rules taped passive-aggressively to the fridge. In the way Brent avoided my eyes like looking directly at me might confront a truth he didn't want to face. And beneath all of that, something darker was brewing. I just didn't know how close it was to the surface. Not until the knock at the front door, still echoing through the halls, pulled us all toward a moment that would change everything. Because right after that knock, we heard a voice. Deep. Unfamiliar. Firm. And when Brent opened the door, my entire reality shifted. The knock faded, but the tension it left behind settled heavily in the walls. Even after Brent answered the door and muttered something I couldn't make out, my heart wouldn't steady. So I retreated into the only place that still felt remotely like mine. The kitchen at dawn. Not the evening kitchen, where Seren patrolled every drawer and cabinet like a guard dog. Not the noon kitchen, where I hovered like a shadow, waiting for permission to touch the kettle. Morning was different. Morning still belonged to me. For now. Pancakes were my peace offering. The skillet was already warming when I cracked the first egg. The soft sizzle comforted me, like a memory waking up. Farland always said my pancakes were little circles of heaven. The kids, Jade with her missing front tooth and Milo with syrup always on his cheeks, used to run in giggling as soon as they smelled them. So when I heard little footsteps padding across the floorboards behind me, my heart fluttered. "Grandma?" Milo whispered. I turned slowly, afraid to move too quickly and scare the moment away. There they were. Two small faces peeking around the doorway. Two sets of eyes that used to light up when they saw me. Jade tugged at her braid. Milo clutched a stuffed dinosaur missing an arm. "Are you making the circles?" Milo asked. I smiled, one of those small smiles that hurts even as it stretches your lips. "Yes, sweetheart." "Come help me stir?" They hurried toward me like little birds freed from a cage. Their excitement warmed the cold kitchen more than the stove did. Milo climbed onto his stool. Jade reached for the mixing spoon. For a single, gentle moment, I felt like myself again. Then the atmosphere changed. A sharp click of heels cut through the warmth. I felt it before I saw her, the sudden drop in temperature, the tightening in my spine. Seren. She moved like a blade, quick, clean, cutting the room in half just by entering. Her perfume hit me first. Cold vanilla. Like sweetness that had turned bitter. "What," she said, voice tight as piano wire, "is going on here?" Jade froze mid-stir. Milo shrank behind my arm. I kept my voice soft. Always soft. "Just making breakfast." "The kids." "You know the rule," she snapped. "No kitchen before 8. Her eyes narrowed at the sight of the batter. Then she stepped forward and physically pulled Jade away from the counter. Not roughly. Worse, casually. As if Jade were a misplaced object she needed to put back. Milo tried to grab my hand, but Seren snatched him by the shoulder. "They don't need your old-fashioned habits," she said, eyes drilling into mine. My stomach nodded. Old-fashioned. She said it like a disease. Like love, time, and warmth were outdated models no longer fit for this home. Brent appeared, and did nothing. Brent stepped into the doorway, hair messy, coffee mug in hand. For the tiniest sliver of a moment, our eyes met. He saw the pancake batter on my apron. He saw the kids pressed against Seren's legs, confused and frightened. He saw my trembling hands on the countertop. And he looked away. Just looked away. No defense. No comfort. No question. He sipped his coffee like he was watching a weather report he'd already seen. Something inside me cracked soundlessly. The kids were taken away. "Come on," Seren said, ushering the children toward the stairs. "You'll have cereal upstairs." Milo turned to me, lip trembling. Grandma. Hurry, she snapped. And just like that, my morning was over. The soft sizzle of the skillet felt suddenly mocking. I turned it off. My hand shook as I wiped the counter, as though erasing the evidence of a crime. Then I heard them whispering. I was walking back toward the hallway when their voices drifted from the study. Brent's tone was low, tired. Seren's was razor sharp. We need her out before the refinancing goes through. My feet froze. Refinancing? Before? A cold, immediate question pressed into my chest. Refinancing what? And why did my presence matter? Seren's voice sharpened. You promised me, Brent. The bank needs a clean financial picture. As long as she's here, we can't move forward. Move forward to what? My hand hovered over the wall. The hallway light flickered above me, buzzing in a way that made my skin itch. Brent muttered, "It's complicated." No, she fired back. It's simple. She goes. Or the plan fails. Plan. Every instinct in me tightened like a pulled thread. I leaned closer and heard one more word. A single word that made the air feel too thin to breathe. Deadline. My heart thudded in my ears. Deadline for what? To push me out? To take something? To sign something? Questions spiraled like a rising storm. But before I could gather my thoughts, before I could even fully understand the danger brewing under my own roof, I heard footsteps behind me. Not Brent's. Not Seren's. Smaller. Lighter. A child's. I turned slowly. And Jade stood there alone, eyes wide and afraid, clutching something tight against her chest. A folded piece of paper. She whispered, "Grandma, I'm not supposed to give you this." And my blood ran cold. The rain tapped softly against the window as I sat alone on the edge of the narrow guest bed, the letter still open beside me like a wound that refused to close. Seren's voice still echoed in the walls of my mind, sharp, metallic, unforgiving. I closed my eyes. And in that darkness, the past rose like an old film reel flickering to life. I could still smell the bleach from the diner floors. Every night after shelving books at the elementary school library, I would slip into that stiff pink waitress uniform and work until my legs trembled. The sound of plates clattering, the bitter scent of burnt coffee, the old jukebox buzzing, it all comes back in painful detail. And every night, I would tuck away a few crumpled dollar bills into a glass jar hidden under the sink. My Brent jar. My boy's future. His chance to leave the smallness of our life behind. I remember him at 16, pale from that terrible winter flu. Brent was always so fragile then. I spent nights pressing cool cloths to his forehead, whispering stories until he fell asleep, even though I had to be at the library by dawn. My hands shook from exhaustion. But I never once complained. Not once. Years later, when he got accepted to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, he cried. "I can't afford it, Mom," he said. And I smiled, pretending my heart wasn't cracking under the weight of the truth. You let me worry about that, sweetheart. I worked double shifts. Skipped meals. Took in mending jobs. I sent him every cent I could. I didn't buy myself a new coat for 7 winters. I walked everywhere to save gas. I went without to give him everything. And when he graduated, the pride in his eyes made every sacrifice worth it. Or so I thought. The image dissolved, leaving me staring at these unfamiliar walls, this small guest room, this narrow bed, this coldness that had replaced the home I once knew. I swallowed hard, my throat aching. After college, Brent struggled with his first job. He called me in tears when the bills piled up. I remember taking out a small loan, one I never told him I hadn't finished paying. I signed the check with hands that still smelled faintly of chalk from the library. He bought his first house with that help. I remember the day he and Seren moved into it. He hugged me tightly. "I'll never forget what you've done for me, Mom." But now he barely looked at me. Now, in this house I helped him buy, I live like some quiet burden shoved into a corner, unwanted, unseen, and carefully pushed out of the way. My chest tightened as I wiped a tear from my cheek. The paper of Seren's letter brushed my fingers, harsh, accusing, final. How did the boy I raised become a man who let his wife treat me like this? The rain outside grew heavier, streaking the window in long, trembling lines. Just like me. And somewhere downstairs, I heard footsteps, Brent's heavy, familiar stride, followed by Seren's sharper, faster one. A whisper. A door closing. A low argument. The house shifted with tension. And I suddenly knew. Something far, far deeper was wrong. Something I had yet to uncover. Something that would change everything. The next morning, the house felt wrong. Too quiet. Too still. Like the air itself was holding its breath. I stepped out of my guest room with my cardigan wrapped tight around me, the hallway light flickering above, one quick blink, like an eye warning me something dreadful was coming. And it did. Right there on the dining table sat a bright white folder. Clean. Precise. Sterile. On the front, typed in bold. House rules for Harleen. My stomach dropped. I reached for it slowly, the paper thick under my fingers, edges sharp enough to cut. The moment I opened it, I heard her footsteps, the confident click-click-click of someone who never questioned their own authority. Seren appeared in the doorway, arms folded, eyebrows lifted with that same cold satisfaction she always wore around me. "Oh good," she said, her voice slicing through the room. "I wanted you to see that before breakfast." I stared at the list. Lines and lines of restrictions. Curfew, 8:30 p.m. No exceptions. No entering the kitchen after 8 p.m. No snacks for the children without permission. No visitors allowed. Laundry only on Tuesdays and Fridays. Keep noise to a minimum. Do not interfere with household decisions. I felt my cheeks warm, humiliation creeping up my neck like ivy. My voice came out smaller than I intended. "Seren, what is this?" She stepped closer, the scent of her expensive perfume pressing into the air like a boundary line between us. "It's simple," she said. "If you want to stay here for free, you'll follow our system. Structure helps everyone. Especially guests." Guest. The word hit harder than a slap. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, Brent walked in, scrolling on his phone, not even looking at me. "Brent," I whispered. "Did you see this?" He barely glanced at the paper. "Oh. Yeah. It's just organization, Mom. Don't make it a big deal." A hollow laugh almost escaped my throat. "Not a big deal?" My son, my boy, who used to run into my arms when thunderstorms scared him, was now staring past me like I was a smudge on the wall. I felt my fingers tremble as I traced the words again. Curfew. No kitchen access. No visitors. Rules meant to shrink me. Contain me. Erase me. Is this really my son? The thought echoed in my mind like an abandoned church bell. The baby I once carried? The child I protected? The man I sacrificed my whole life for? Brent finally looked up when the silence stretched too long. "Mom, don't give Seren a hard time." She's just trying to make things run smoothly. Then he kissed Seren's cheek and walked away. Just like that. I stood there, holding the rule book like a sentence. The morning light filtered in through the blinds, cutting sharp lines across the floor, dividing the room into bars, like a prison cell I hadn't realized I'd been living in. Seren leaned in, her voice low, nearly a whisper. I expect you to sign it by tonight. Then she walked away, heels tapping, each step sounding like a closing door. I pressed the folder to my chest, trying to steady my breathing. But something inside me cracked, quietly, invisibly. Not just from the rules, but from the dawning terror that all of this wasn't random. It was planned, calculated. And for the first time, a chilling question settled in the back of my mind. What exactly were they preparing for? The house felt colder, the silence deeper. And as I stood there alone, gripping that folder, I knew this was only the beginning of something far darker. The first sign was small, so small I almost convinced myself it was nothing. Jade, my sweet 9-year-old who used to burst into my room every morning with stories about school, suddenly walked past me in the hallway without a word. Not even a glance. Her little shoulders stiffened as she hurried by, clutching her tablet tight against her chest. I paused, my hand still lingering on my doorknob. Good morning, honey, I said softly, offering the same warm smile I'd worn for her since the day she was born. She hesitated, just for a heartbeat. Then Seren appeared behind her, placing a hand on Jade's shoulder. Come on, she said in a hushed, urgent voice. Don't linger. Jade's eyes flicked up at me, only for a second. Afraid. Conflicted. Then she lowered her gaze and followed her mother into the kitchen. A whisper. Barely audible. Just enough to sting. Remember what I told you. Grandma gets confused. My breath caught. Grandma, confused? Later that afternoon, I sat on the back porch, knitting a small scarf for Milo, blue, his favorite color. The sun was warm on my face, the breeze soft, carrying the scent of pine and cut grass. I heard footsteps, quick, light ones. Milo. He poked his little head around the doorframe, his hair tousled, his cheeks flushed from playing. My heart warmed instantly. Hey, sweetheart, I whispered, opening my arms. But he froze. Just stopped. Like something invisible held him back. His big brown eyes flicked toward the kitchen where, through the window, I could see Seren chopping vegetables, but watching. Always watching. Then he whispered, almost trembling. Mommy said, not to get too close. The words cut through me like ice water. Why, my love? I asked, my voice shaking. What did Mommy say about Grandma? He played with the hem of his shirt, twisting it nervously. She said, you're sick. And you forget things. And sometimes, you say things that aren't true. My heart clenched so hard I pressed a hand to my chest. Me? Sick? Untrustworthy? I knelt down, bringing myself to his level, though the movement sent a sharp ache through my knees. Milo. I'm not sick, I whispered, swallowing the tightness in my throat. I love you. I would never hurt you. Never. He looked up at me, confused, torn, his little face crumpling with the weight of something he wasn't old enough to understand. Then, suddenly, Milo. Inside. Seren's voice cracked like a whip. He flinched. And then he ran from me. That night, I lay in my small guest room, the moonlight stretching long shadows across the walls. The house was quiet, too quiet. I buried my face into my pillow, tears soaking the fabric. Silent tears. The kind that come from a deeper place than pain. From betrayal. My grandbabies. My babies. Being taught to fear me. My body curled inward as if I could shield my heart from breaking any further. But the blows kept coming. Memory after memory flooding me. Jade baking cookies with me. Milo falling asleep in my lap during story time. Tiny hands reaching for mine. Laughter echoing through the hallways. Now replaced with flinches. Avoidance. Forced distance. My chest tightened, each breath jagged. This wasn't just cruelty anymore. This was erasure. Someone, Seren, was rewriting who I was in the eyes of the two people who loved me without conditions. And Brent. My own son. He let it happen. The injustice pressed down on me, suffocating. The sadness, the disbelief, the helplessness, it all swirled until my pillow was drenched. And then, as I stared at the ceiling, waiting for the ache in my chest to ease, praying for sleep that would not come, I realized something chilling. This wasn't about the kids. This was about removing me. Piece by piece. Relationship by relationship. Until there was nothing left of me in this house at all. And as that realization settled in, cold and heavy, I sensed something darker was coming next. A new shift. A new cruelty. One I wouldn't see coming until it was too late. On a Tuesday morning, one of my permitted laundry days, according to Seren's rulebook, the house was quiet, unnervingly so. No cartoons playing upstairs. No footsteps running down the hall. Just the distant hum of the refrigerator and the soft drip, drip, drip of the kitchen faucet. I walked toward the laundry room with my basket pressed to my hip. The air felt heavy, like the house itself was watching me. As I passed the kitchen, I noticed the trash bin overflowing, crumpled papers spilling out, a mess Seren would never normally tolerate. Something about the corner of a shredded envelope caught my eye. A familiar crest. A banking symbol I hadn't seen since my husband, Warren, passed. A strange pressure tightened in my chest. I glanced around, no footsteps, no voices, no Seren lurking in a doorway, and slowly knelt beside the bin. The tile was cold against my knees. With trembling fingers, I reached into the trash. At first, I only expected a bill, maybe Brent's messy budgeting. But then, my breath froze. A refinance application. For this house. Their house. The house I helped them buy. I smoothed the wrinkled pages on the floor, the ink smeared, edges stained with a coffee ring. My eyes scanned the printed lines, each one tightening the noose around my stomach. Loan amount, $428,000. Collateral, primary residence. Additional funds, transferred from Whitford Retirement Savings Account. My heart lurched. That account. Warren's account. The one he and I built together for 42 years. The one Brent swore, all teary-eyed at the funeral, he would never touch until I was gone. My hands shook so hard the papers rattled. No, there must be some mistake. But then I saw it. A signature on the third page. Harleen Whitford. My name. Perfectly spelled. Perfectly slanted. And perfectly forged. I covered my mouth to keep a gasp from escaping. The room spun, shadows stretching across the floor like reaching fingers. My voice came out in a whisper. Dear God. The air suddenly felt thin, almost unbreathable. I pressed a hand to the cabinet to steady myself. They hadn't just talked about removing me. They were financially preparing for it. As I gathered the documents, more papers slid out from the pile. Printouts, emails, notes, a folded page with Brent's handwriting. Once her name is off everything, we can proceed. Don't tell her anything until it's finalized. Keep the kids away, no drama. Another note, this one unmistakably Seren's sharp handwriting. She won't survive living alone. She's too fragile. After the refinance is done, we can legally move her. Legally move me? To where? A nursing facility? A care home I hadn't chosen? Somewhere I'd be tucked away, out of sight, out of mind, until I wasn't their problem anymore? I felt the floor tilt beneath me. I clutched the papers to my chest, praying my heart would slow down. All this time, all the cold stares, the shrinking of my space, the stolen moments with my grandchildren, the rules, the lies. It wasn't cruelty. It was preparation. A coordinated plan. To remove me. To take my home. And to drain the last piece of the life Warren and I built together. The house suddenly felt colder, darker, every corner a threat, every quiet moment a trap. Then, the front door clicked. Footsteps. Brent's voice. Laughter. Seren's laughter. They were home early. I scrambled to my feet just as their shadows stretched into the hallway. The documents pressed against my chest crinkled loudly, too loudly. And right then, as their voices grew closer, I realized I had two choices. Hide the papers. Or confront them. And lose everything before I understood the full extent of what they'd already taken. My pulse hammered in my ears. Because this wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was war. And I was only just discovering how long the attack had been planned. When Brent and Seren's voices drifted farther into the living room, I slipped quietly into my guest room, closing the door with the gentlest click I could manage. My heart was still pounding with the discovery of the forged signature, but something deeper, something older, was clawing its way up through the fog. A feeling I'd ignored for too long. A suspicion I tried to smother with kindness, patience, understanding. I placed the documents under my bed, beneath the storage bin where I kept my old sweaters. Then, with trembling hands, I knelt beside my small suitcase, the one I kept tucked inside the closet. A habit. A safety anchor. Warren used to tease me about it, saying I packed like someone always ready to leave at a moment's notice. Maybe he had been right. Maybe I knew, somewhere deep inside, that life had a cruel way of sweeping the ground out from under you. I unzipped the suitcase slowly, the sound unnervingly loud in the quiet. Inside. A few folded blouses. A lavender sachet. A small velvet jewelry pouch. I reached for it instinctively. But when I opened it, my breath froze. Empty. Completely, horrifyingly empty. My wedding ring set. The one Warren gave me on our 40th anniversary. The one with the tiny engraving inside the band. More lifetimes, please. Gone. A soft, broken sound escaped me, half gasp, half sob. The glove-like pressure of grief squeezed my ribs. No, I must have misplaced it. Maybe I put it somewhere else during the move. Maybe. But the truth punched through the denial. A memory surfaced. One I had pushed aside at the time, thinking I misinterpreted it. 3 weeks earlier. A dinner party Seren hosted. Her expensive dress shimmering under the chandelier. And on her hand, a sparkling ring set. Gold. Diamond. Familiar. I remembered staring at it for almost a full minute, feeling a strange tug in my chest. "That's a lovely ring," I had said gently. Seren smiled, too quickly, too brightly. "Oh, this? Vintage. Found it at a boutique downtown." My fingers had brushed the engraving she hid with her thumb. My eyes had recognized the tiny scuff on the band from when Warren dropped it once, laughing like a schoolboy. But I pushed the thought away. Because who wants to believe their own family would steal something so sacred? Now, kneeling on the floor with the empty velvet pouch, that moment replayed in agonizing clarity. Not misplaced. Not lost. Stolen. And if she stole this, what else had they quietly taken? My spine prickled with a cold dread. The refinancing. The forged signature. The rule book. The lies to my grandchildren. Piece by piece, they were stripping me of everything. My money, my memories. My family. My identity. And now, even the last physical symbol of my marriage. Of Warren. Of the promises we built our life on. Was sitting in her jewelry box, being flaunted as some vintage trinket. A hot tear slid down my cheek and hit the velvet. Then another. Then more. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet, leaking grief. The kind that comes from betrayal so deep it doesn't scream. It suffocates. I clutched the empty pouch against my chest, closing my eyes as the realization settled in fully. They hadn't started stealing now. They'd been taking from me. Piece by piece. Long before they tried to erase me. And if they were bold enough to take my wedding rings, what else were they confident I'd never notice? What else? Were they planning? The room felt colder. Smaller. Like the walls were inching inward. Then, soft footsteps outside my door. A shadow paused beneath the crack of light. Listening. Watching. Waiting. I held my breath. Because now, I wasn't just a burden in their eyes. I was an obstacle. And obstacles, I realized, are meant to be removed. It happened in the late afternoon. That strange hour when the sun hangs low and everything feels drenched in fading gold. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, the empty velvet pouch still clutched in my palm, when I heard footsteps marching down the hallway. Not casual steps. Not tired ones. Purposeful. Rhythmic. Like someone heading into battle. The door swung open before I could even stand. Seren filled the doorway, her silhouette sharp against the hallway light. Her expression wasn't angry. It was worse. Calm. Cold. Prepared. Behind her. Brent. Arms crossed. Jaw tight. Eyes avoiding mine. My throat tightened. Seren? I whispered. What's? She raised a hand, silencing me. We're done tiptoeing around this, she said, her tone razor thin. It's time to be direct. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. She stepped into the room, her heels clicking against the hardwood, each sound slicing through the silence like a needle. You, she said, pointing one polished finger at me. Will never see Jade and Milo again if you don't leave quietly. The words ricocheted through my skull, unreal, thunderous. Never see them again? My babies? A soft gasp escaped me before I could stop it. I rose from the bed, leaning slightly on the nightstand for balance. What? My voice cracked like dry wood. What are you saying? Why would you? This isn't a negotiation, she snapped. Her eyes glittered with something triumphant. You leave this house without a scene, or you lose access to the kids permanently. The room tilted. My knees weakened so suddenly I had to grip the dresser to stay upright. I turned slowly toward Brent. My son. My only child. The boy I nursed through fever when he was 13. The young man I hugged after his college graduation, pride spilling out of me like sunlight. The man who had once told me, voice thick with sincerity, "I'll take care of you someday, Mom. I promise." He stared at the wall just past my shoulder. Not at me. Brent? I whispered. Brent, look at me. His jaw tightened. But he didn't raise his head. Not even once. Tell her you didn't agree to this, I begged softly. Tell her you don't mean this. Brent, please. He finally looked up. Just for a second. And I saw it. Greed. Fear. Weakness. All tangled together in those eyes I once knew better than my own. Then he said, voice flat, "It's better this way, Mom." My heart split clean down the middle. Better. For whom? Seren stepped closer. Her perfume filled the room again. The same scent she had worn that night while wearing my stolen rings. We're building a future here. A real one, she said. And we can't do that with you, interfering. Interfering. That word landed like a punch. That's not what I... My voice faltered. Tears blurred the room. You've put us in a difficult position, she continued. Her tone remained calm, untouched, rehearsed. If you stay, you complicate everything. Brent exhaled sharply, arms still crossed, shoulders rigid. She's right, Mom, he said without emotion. It's too much. The finances, the stress, the kids, everything. The finances. There it was. The silent truth finally slipping out. I felt myself sway. You're choosing money, I whispered, barely audible. Over your own mother? The question hung in the air like a dying breath. Brent's eyes flickered. Shame, guilt, hesitation. All gone in an instant as he hardened again. Seren answered for him. We choose stability, she said simply. And you are a liability. A liability. Not a mother. Not a grandmother. Not family. A liability. My chest tightened, every breath sharp and icy. For a moment, I thought I might collapse. The room spun. My pulse hammered in my ears. And something inside me. Something old, something tender. Cracked so deeply I felt the break physically. Jade's laughter. Milo's tiny hands. My wedding rings. My husband's memory. My sacrifices. My home. My dignity. Piece by piece. They were all gone. And now, the beating heart of my life. My grandchildren. Were being used as the final weapon. I looked at Brent one last time. Really looked. And the truth settled over me like a heavy, lifeless shroud. He had chosen her. Her ambitions. Her comfort. Her plans. He had chosen greed over love. Self-interest over loyalty. Convenience over his own mother. My voice trembled as I whispered. You've lost yourself, Brent. And you don't even know it. The silence that followed was suffocating. A silence so thick it wrapped around my lungs and squeezed. Then, a sudden knock echoed from the front door. Sharp. Unexpected. Loud enough to jolt all three of us. Seren's eyes narrowed. Brent's posture stiffened. And I felt something shift. Like the first crack of lightning before a storm breaks open. Something, or someone, had arrived. And whatever waited on the other side of that door was about to change everything. The hallway is silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like the last breath before a storm. Harleen stands there, small and trembling, clutching the banister. Her son's final betrayal still echoes in her ears. Leave quietly. Her heart aches, but her eyes suddenly clear. A shift. A resolve. A quiet fire rekindles inside her, the same fire she had when she worked double shifts, when she fought to keep Brent healthy, when she buried her husband with dignity. She wipes her tears with a steady hand. Then she walks into her tiny guest room. No shaking. No panic. Just determination. She picks up her old flip phone, the one no one pays attention to, opens her contacts, and scrolls to the name she hoped she'd never need. Mr. Cade, attorney. Her thumb hovers for a moment. Then she presses call. He answers on the first ring. Mrs. Whitford? His voice is calm, respectful, something she hasn't heard in months. Are you certain you want to move forward? Harleen looks toward the hallway where Brent and Seren had just stood triumphant. Her voice is soft, but unshakable. Yes. I'm ready. Proceed with the transfer. A long pause. A knowing tone. As you wish, ma'am. She ends the call. The audience doesn't know what the transfer means yet. But they feel it. A quiet power has shifted. The storm is no longer over Harleen, it's forming behind her. Something big is coming. I hung up the phone and sat down slowly on the edge of my guest bed, trying to steady my racing thoughts. My hands were still trembling, but not from fear anymore. No. From anticipation. The room felt different somehow, heavier, yet lighter at the same time. Like the air itself was holding its breath for what was about to come. I closed my eyes, letting the memory wash over me, the memory I had tucked away for decades, almost forgotten in the chaos of raising a child, grieving my husband, and caring for my grandchildren. Farlin. My beloved Farlin Whitford. Quiet. Patient. Brilliant in a way no one ever truly understood. While the world thought he was content with his modest office in Seattle, Washington, he was quietly building empires behind the scenes. Tech startups, software investments, early shares in companies that no one knew would become giants. And when he passed, he left me not just his love, but everything. I was worth $26.4 million. I swallowed the lump in my throat. 26 million. A fortune I had never flaunted, never used to assert power, never allowed to define me. I had purposely lived humbly, even as the world whispered about money, status, and influence. I wanted only what truly mattered, my family, my grandkids, the small moments of joy that money could never buy. Breakfast with Jade. Story time with Milo. Their laughter echoing through the halls I once thought were mine to protect. And yet, here they were. Brent and Seren. Treated me like a shadow. A liability. A mere obstacle in their path to whatever they had imagined for themselves. But the truth, my truth, was about to reshape everything. I rose slowly, my heart pounding with a calm ferocity. The audience can feel it, the calm before the storm, the pivot from victim to force. Every small smile I had ever given. Every quiet act of kindness. Every sacrifice. It all mattered now. Every ounce of patience and humility was my weapon. I pressed my hands against the dresser and whispered aloud to no one. You thought I was powerless, you were wrong. Because the bank accounts, the shares, the wealth my husband left me, all untouchable. All mine. And with them, I had the power to reclaim my life, my family, and my dignity. The camera lingers on my face, calm, composed, yet burning with purpose. The air has shifted. The tables are turning. The audience can sense it. Something monumental is coming. And soon, Brent and Seren will realize. They have no idea who they are dealing with. The soft hum of the evening settled over the quiet suburban street. I was standing by the window, the fading sunlight catching on the folds of my cardigan, my heart calm but electric with anticipation. And then, a long, low rumble. At first, I thought it was another neighbor's car. But no. This was different. Sleek. Dark. Commanding. A black limousine, glinting under the amber glow of the streetlights, rolled to a stop in front of the house. I stepped back, letting the moment stretch. Brent and Seren were in the kitchen, arguing softly about the rulebook and curfew. I could almost hear the disbelief forming in their minds before it even reached their lips. A knock on the front door, 3 sharp, deliberate taps. The kind of knock that announces power, presence, authority. Seren went first, her expression faltering. She opened the door slightly, peering out like someone afraid they'd see a mistake. The driver, tall and impeccably dressed, tipped his hat slightly. "Mrs. Whitford," he said, voice smooth, respectful, yet firm. "Your residence is ready." Seren's face went white. The color drained from her cheeks as if the words themselves were ice water running down her spine. Brent stepped forward, confusion etched into every line of his face. "Mom, what is going on?" His voice stuttered, faltering on the words he had no idea how to answer. I stepped forward from behind him, calm. So calm it unnerved them. My eyes met theirs, steady, unshakable, burning with something they hadn't expected, authority. "You'll find out soon enough," I said softly, but each word carried weight. The room seemed smaller, the walls tilting toward them. The power had shifted, completely, undeniably. Seren whispered, almost to herself. This can't be real." But the black limousine outside gleamed under the streetlights, silent and monumental. The driver's hand still resting lightly on the door handle, waiting. Patience. Poise. Power. And in that moment, Brent and Seren realized. The woman they had tried to erase, to humiliate, to control, was no longer powerless. The air in the house changed. The silence became oppressive, electric. And the audience can feel it, the first moment of reversal, where the predator becomes prey. I took a deep breath, letting the tension hang. Because the best part, the part they would never see coming, was about to unfold. And it all started with the opening of that limousine door. The limousine door opened with a soft whoosh, and I stepped out, calm, poised, every inch the matriarch I had been all along. Brent and Seren stood frozen in the foyer, their confidence evaporating like mist. Seren's sharp heels clicked weakly against the tile as she tried to regain composure. I let the moment stretch. A long, deliberate pause. The audience can almost feel the heartbeat in that silence, the tension tight enough to cut with a knife. Then I spoke. Quietly. Softly. But every word hit like a hammer. I sold the house last month. Brent blinked. Seren gasped. I could see the disbelief painting their faces, like children caught red-handed but unsure what they'd done. You're refinancing? I continued, my voice steady, unwavering. Invalid. Completely void. You are illegally occupying property you do not own. Seren's knees buckled. She sank into the nearest chair, pale as a sheet. The lipstick she'd carefully applied weeks ago seemed to have drained from her face entirely. Brent stuttered, his words fumbling over each other. What? But, Mom, we. I held up a hand, silencing him. You forged my signature on a financial document, I said. That has been reported to the authorities. The law is already on its way to untangle your little scheme. Seren buried her face in her hands. Her sharp, calculating posture collapsed entirely, replaced with raw panic. I let them sit in that moment. Let them feel the shift. Years of manipulation, of lies, of control, unraveled in a heartbeat. I could hear the faint sound of the limousine engine, like a low growl waiting outside, a symbol of everything they had underestimated. Then I leaned slightly closer to Brent, my voice softening just enough to cut deeper than any anger could. You chose greed over love. You chose her ambition over family. And now, you will face the consequences. He swallowed hard, realization dawning too late. Seren's whispers, trembling, almost inaudible. This isn't possible. I smiled faintly, a quiet, victorious smile. Because for the first time in weeks, the house, my home, my family, my dignity, was back in my control. The audience feels the weight of justice landing, but the story isn't over. The final moves, the ultimate reclaiming of what's mine, are about to unfold. The gates of my new home closed behind me with a quiet, authoritative click. A deep exhale escaped me, not relief, not triumph, but something deeper, peace. I stepped onto the polished stone floor of the grand foyer, the scent of cedar and polished oak filling the air. Sunlight poured through panoramic windows, painting golden streaks across the marble, and the Rocky Mountains stretched endlessly in the distance, snow-capped and immovable, like witnesses to my life's turning point. I ran my fingers along the banister of the sweeping staircase, feeling solid, secure. No fear. No restrictions. No whispered rules or curfews. Just freedom. A soft knock echoed through the hallway. My private chef arrived first, carrying a basket of fresh herbs and organic produce, ready to prepare meals tailored to my taste. Moments later, my caretaker appeared, checking the security systems and ensuring everything was in place for comfort and privacy. Finally, Mr. Cade, my attorney, gave a discreet nod from the doorway, a reminder that every legal move, every safeguard, was meticulously aligned. I walked into the living room, where the massive fireplace roared quietly, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Across the mantel were framed photos of Jade and Milo, smiles frozen in time, tiny hands reaching out, eyes sparkling with innocence. I whispered their names softly, my heart tightening with longing and hope. Soon, my loves, soon. I ran a hand over the smooth glass of the panoramic window, the mountains stretching endlessly beyond. The air was crisp, clean, and intoxicatingly free. No whispers of betrayal. No cold stares. No rules that weren't mine. For the first time in years, I could breathe. I could plan. I could reclaim the moments stolen from me. And in this space, this sanctuary of my own making, I finally realized the truth. I hadn't just survived. I had transformed. From a woman pushed aside, into one who commanded respect, power, and dignity. The camera lingers on the room, sunlight catching crystal chandeliers, the flickering fireplace, photos of the grandchildren waiting to be reunited. Every detail is a symbol of a life rebuilt, luxury, yes, but carefully, thoughtfully lived, with love at the center. Outside, the mountains stand timeless, immovable, just like I am now. And somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of children's laughter waits. Jade and Milo. Soon. The audience feels it. Triumph. Power regained. Justice served. The evening air in Boulder was crisp, the mountains glowing softly under the fading sun. I was in the kitchen, reviewing the day's schedule with my caretaker, when the sharp sound of tires crunching on the gravel driveway made me pause. A familiar black SUV pulled up. Brent and Seren. The doors burst open before I could even process it. They stumbled onto the stone path, desperation etched into every line of their faces. Seren's mascara had run slightly, smudged under her eyes. She grabbed my arm before I could even step back. "Mom." "Mrs. Whitford, we need help," she pleaded, voice breaking. "We'll lose everything, please. We made a mistake." Brent's shoulders sagged, head bowed. I didn't know what else to do. "Mom, please." I looked at them both. Calm. Steady. No tremble. No hesitation. And then I spoke, softly but firmly. "You already did. You lost your conscience." Seren's hand faltered, trembling against my arm. Her words caught in her throat. Brent looked up, his eyes wide, shame and fear mixing in a way I had never seen before. I let the silence stretch, letting the weight of my words sink in. No amount of begging could undo what they had already done. The betrayal, the manipulation, the theft, the lies, they were permanent marks on their character. I stepped back slowly, letting them absorb the truth. They were powerless now, not because of wealth or law, but because they had chosen the wrong path, and integrity does not bend for greed. Seren fell into a chair, trembling. Brent swayed, voice barely audible. "Mom, we can't." I shook my head, eyes softening just slightly, not for them, but for the weight of the lesson they had ignored. "You lost your way," I whispered, the wind from the open doors carrying my words into the night. "But I found mine." The mountains outside framed the moment, solid, immovable, unyielding, just like me. And for the first time in years, I felt fully free. Fully in control. Fully myself. The audience feels the moral resolution, the justice served, not through vengeance, but through wisdom, patience, and unshakable strength. The camera lingers on Brent and Seren, shattered, silent, while Harleen walks past them, heading toward the panoramic windows and the home she has earned. The future awaits, and it belongs entirely to her. The morning sunlight streamed through the panoramic windows of my Boulder mansion, casting golden streaks across the polished floors. A soft breeze carried the scent of pine from the mountains beyond. Today was different. Today, the house, my sanctuary, was about to be filled with laughter once more. The court had ruled in my favor. Visitation rights granted, due to the overwhelming evidence of emotional abuse and manipulation by Brent and Seren. Justice had its weight, and finally, it had tipped toward what was right. And then I heard it. Small, rapid footsteps echoing in the driveway. A familiar giggle. A tiny hand knocking lightly on the front door. "Grandma." Before I could even open it, Jade and Milo burst through the doorway, arms flailing, faces lit with excitement and relief. I dropped everything and knelt, tears streaming freely now, not sorrowful, but joyous, long-awaited, cathartic. Jade threw herself into my arms, wrapping them around me tightly. "Milo." "Come on," she urged, tugging him along. Milo tumbled into my embrace, small hands clutching my cardigan as if he could hold on forever. I held them both close, inhaling the scent of shampoo, of fresh soap, of childhood itself. Their warmth pressed against my chest, and all the pain, betrayal, and heartbreak of the past month seemed to dissolve in that instant. I whispered softly, over and over, "No one will ever keep us apart again." They nestled closer, and I could feel the rhythm of their little hearts against mine, a steady, undeniable reminder of love's enduring power. The camera panned slowly outward, capturing the grandeur of the mansion, the mountains beyond, and the sunlight spilling through the wide windows. Soft, orchestral music swells, carrying the audience on the emotional tide of triumph, justice, and restored family bonds. A final lingering shot shows us, 3 generations reunited. Harlene's face serene, strong, and radiant. The grandchildren laughing, free, safe. And the mansion, once just a home, now a symbol of resilience, justice, and new beginnings. Fade out. The story closes not with revenge, but with love, victory, and the unbreakable bonds of family. What do you think about what Harlene did? Did she go too far, or was it justice? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more emotional, powerful stories like this, don't forget to subscribe.